One thing for me, I hope you're ashamed of yourself. You should be. It's 70 degrees out. You have bunny hoops on.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I am actually filming this the day prior in the afternoon, so everything that is said here and mentioned will be from Sunday afternoon time frame, though the video will be coming out, of course, Monday morning. But anyway, let's move on. We're catching up on Bama Camera's arrest and what is going on with that. And currently, as of today, there has been many articles. This is starting to get some national attention. Even Fox News, surprisingly, has picked up on this, though it is a surprisingly short article about the situation. And I'll have a link to this article and many of the other articles in the description below. But pretty much what is the interesting thing is they're saying that the Wetumpka police department ended up getting so many angry calls about the incident that it jammed the phone system, hindering dispatchers from answering 911 calls. And the other part was city officials say the phone calls were obscene, threatening, and racially motivated, which is quite interesting on that part. But if you dive in further and let's say look at Police One's thing, it's literally the same thing that Fox News. In fact, I think they just literally copy-pasted the exact same article into their thing. And on top of that, it's quite more interesting what's happening with the Police One's Facebook comments area, you could sort of say, for where they post the articles where people can publicly comment if you have a Facebook account and all that other stuff. And people are citing the issue of, the police couldn't focus on the 911 calls. They had to pull staff from the emergency abuse hotline shelter in order to deal with the amount of phone calls coming in and all that stuff. And yet, I have yet to see the argument, well, what about triaging the phone calls where emergency phone calls are supposed to take priority over the non-emergency calls and properly dealing with the situation on that part? Yeah, okay, your phone lines are melting on the non-emergency lines. Still, you can focus primarily on the emergency calls and handle the non-emergency calls when you can get to them. That's how you should be properly triaging the phone calls. And that's one of the things that is pretty well glossed over by a lot of people. On top of that, the Facebook page for the city police department and the city itself, for the most part, have been disabled, taken down, so no one can comment on it because they were quoting saying there were people getting, local citizens that were commenting or something like that were getting threatening calls. And, not threatening calls, threatening messages, which is quite interesting to say because I would like to actually see proof of that. And so far, some of the stuff that they have been stating that happened, the city has, there isn't really any proof of it yet. But who knows? Maybe they will publish some of that proof to prove us wrong or to substantiate their claims, or we might just have to wait and see if it will actually go to court. Now, as of today, around 12:25, the Wetumpka Herald published 2 articles about this, and the title for the most for one of them is "The Officials Stand by the Arrest in the Case of This Video." And they state that, however, some confusion has been expressed at what Golden was exactly charged with, who sent the orders, and who signed off on them. So right now there isn't officially sure who signed off on the warrant and gave the order to arrest. But also on top of that, the police chief, let's see here, going through the latest article, initiated plan. However, Wetumpka Police Chief Danny Billingsley, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, I'm not going to try, said on Tuesday the initial plan to act to arrest Golden had been in the works for over a week. Now, that is a very damning statement, because the time between when the arrest happened and when the initial incident happened was just under a week. In fact, that would place this, if it was over a week, before the video was even made. So why did they have a thing for his arrest, going about his arrest, before he even filmed that footage? And the Wetumpka Herald actually puts this out. The actual day of the filming incident was said to have been Tuesday, June 2nd, which left a period of 3 days before the video made it online. It was not until the following Tuesday, June 7th, that the police phone lines were made unavailable, with the recording which said technical difficulties were at fault. Also, later on in the article, they point out that it was the police chief who gave the order to shut down the non-emergency phone lines, and also have the emergency 911 phone calls routed to a different agency, and then have them routed back, kind of thing, sort of help filter the calls, I guess. But here's another interesting thing he said. He said the calls were blocking incoming calls on their phone lines, and he said it consisted also of what he called robocalls. Now, I'm wondering, was there people actually doing robocalls, or was it just the huge amount of call flooding that was coming in that was, clogging up all the lines? Billings said the city only had one dispatcher center located at the police department, which also operated ambulance and fire services. After the phones were shut off, Billingsley said he moved to have the 911 calls rerouted through county dispatch services, resulting in what he said was a 1-minute delay. And so there you go. He made the chief there made the order. And I'm just like, okay, so what you should have probably did is maybe moved your non-emergency phone call services to the other agency, or sort of had that split up in some way that you have your 911 calls and kept your 911 calls going through the thing. Because if anybody's calling, they're not calling the 911 phone call service as what was happened and shown on the Pinnock article that was put up a few days ago, where Felipe Hemming tried to get a hold of the Wetumpka's police public information officer, and then he gets a call back from him accusing him he called the 911 directory. Well, somehow got it through on the 911 side of things, on the emergency call through, which is very difficult to do if you're in another state. I would have to say it borders on nearly impossible to pull off, because you literally would have to have someone route you to that 911 service through that 911 line in order to have that happen. In which case, then it wouldn't be his fault; it would be the person that routed that call, which was the case. And for those of you who are wondering, yes, their Pinnock article for this is down. There was a technical issue, but I will actually have a link in the video description of this that goes to the archive Google of that article, so that way you can go ahead and refresh yourself and see the updates if you're missing it. Also, it has all the original links in it, so you can listen to the SoundCloud footage of that phone call and some of the other videos, and look up the press release and all that stuff. Pinnock is in the process of trying to re-put in all those articles, but it's going to be a time-consuming kind of issue. Also, what is even more interesting was the ACLU have chimed in on another article on the Wetumpka Herald. And I am quite surprised. The ACLU doesn't generally step in when it comes to the First Amendment stuff that the activists do. It's the first time I've seen the ACLU really actually step in. And Randall Marsh, with the Alabama branch of the American Civil Liberties Union, commented on this, and He says, Marshall said the incident seemed to be a clear violation of Golden's First Amendment rights. The notion that he can be arrested based upon people calling the police department to complain about the police department's treatment of him while he was videotaping just turns the criminal law on its head, said Marshall. He said the First Amendment right to videotaping, I think the police ultimately begrudgingly acknowledge that, but then arrest him because of other people's actions is really bordering on the absurd. And I do agree on that part, because if you specifically look up the law on this specific issue, let's see here, I'm trying to pull up the tab where I had the law written down, pulled up on, and I would be surprised, I think I must have accidentally closed it. But it specifically states that you have to be directly involved with taking it down. You got to be either jamming it up, cutting the lines, or something like that yourself, which is hard to do as a single person. And on top of that, we know that Keith did not say, "Hey, do a call flood on this agency." No, it was News Now Houston and a few other activists. I think Cop Block even got in on this, saying, "Hey, we need the call flood." And then the arrest happens, and then I step in with my live stream saying, "Hey, yo, it's time to do a call flood." And that's, further the call flood, due to the fact that this is literally like going and arresting Bama Camera over this is like putting water on a crude oil fire. That's pretty much what it turns out to be. Now, what's even further interesting is the city council in general did not have any input on this specific case, with the exception of one. Let's see if I can try to find it here. And that would be Council Member Greg Jones of District 5. Said the incident had nothing to do with the First Amendment rights, and the officers involved handled the matter in the most professional way they could at the time. Jones said he was reserve deputy sheriff and had 25 years of law enforcement experience with the state troopers. Jones said WPD intention was not to violate anyone's First Amendment right, but only a safety concern. He said anyone who had interest in the WPD only had to walk in the front door of the building to learn more about its operations. I think he fails to grasp the intention of a First Amendment audit, or test, as I call them. And so this is going to be interesting on that part. And I highly suggest that we should call flood Mr. Jones here about this, and looky what I end up finding within the Wetumpka website, Chamber of Commerce. I have found the phone numbers for the city council members ranging from District 1 all the way to 5. So, what do you know? We'll be able to post this. I'll post this information, and we can all make phone calls today on this. Also, if you zoom down to the bottom of the page, you'll find the mayor, city clerks, and, the public library. I don't think the public library is going to have anything to say about this because they're the library. So, but it's literally got a bunch of phone numbers on here that is publicly available, and I'm just making it easier. So come at me, Wetumpka, if you want to charge me with clogging up your phone lines. Please. Because I'm just as guilty as a few others for inciting the phone calls if you want to push it. Oh, and here's the... I finally found it. The interference with public safety and communications, which is section 13A-10-1-16. And basically, Except as provided, well, B, except as provided in subsection C, a person commits an offense of interference with public safety communication if a person does any of the following: knowingly and intentionally displaces, damages, removes, injures, tampers with, destroys, or renders inoperable any transmitter, receiver, transceiver, tower, antenna, or any cable, telegraph, phone, or telephone line or equipment wire, fiber, pole, computer equipment, telecommunications switch, dispatching equipment, or conduit belonging to, required, used, or intended to be used for public safety communications or material property, appurtenant thereto, or whatever. Okay, definitely not number 1. What about number 2? Knowingly and intentionally displaces, damages, removes, injures, tampers with, destroys, or renders inoperable any audible or visual device or outdoor speaker or sign which is intended to indiscriminately provide or generate mass notification, alert, or warning of a person's in an event of emergency or material or property appurtenant thereto. I'm bad on my English. No, I don't think Keith is guilty of that one. What about number 3? Knowingly and intentionally interfering with the transmission or reception of any data communications, message, or public safety communication by any law enforcement, fire service, 911 personnel, or emergency service in order to hinder the agency in the fulfillment of its duties. Well, this looks like you would have to intentionally be saying, I'm going to have everybody phone call up the non-emergency system to intentionally cause a hindrance to their ability to respond to emergency phone calls. In most cases, well, pretty much in all cases, I don't think anybody has that kind of malice, to be honest. So, and last time I checked, Keith wasn't the one that called for the call flood. He just put up the information so you could make the phone call if you wanted to. It was others that said, hey, let's do a call flood. And still, that wasn't with the intent to interfere with the transmission and communications of public safety information or the 911 personnel. Okay, number 4. Knowingly and intentionally operates or permits to be operated in any apparatus in his or her possession or under his or her indirect control, which is capable of transmitting radio signals or telephone communications that interfere or cause disruption with public safety communication lines. Number 4 there, again, requires a knowing intent. We'd have to know beforehand and still proceed on the action. We don't have no idea that their operator, the staff there cannot deal with the call flood and was purposely ignoring emergency phone calls that deal with non-emergency phone calls, which is a failure of proper triage of certain situations. Okay, number 5. Knowingly and intentionally intercept any transmission of public safety communication which is encrypted for the purpose of preventing the unauthorized access to sensitive information. Yeah, obviously not that one either. So we are looking at what can it be charged with under here? I'm still scratching my head because number 3 would be stretching it to the finest limits right there, and I still don't see a connection there on this. They couldn't get him on 3. I would love to see a jury say, yeah, he's guilty under 3. That, is shown all the information. They would have to prove he knowingly and intentionally asked for a call flood and all that stuff when there isn't evidence where he asked for a call flood. That would have to be levied against people from out of state that sat there and said, hey, yeah, let's do a call flood. So, in which case, I don't think this law would apply due to the fact that it's not only in state on that issue. It would have to come down to a national law, which so far I haven't heard of one. So that pretty much wraps up what we know about the situation with Bama Camera. But also, I want to add in one last thing. Let's see here. And that deals with the hiring of the Wetumpka police chief that I ended up digging up completely on accident. And this is an article from the Montgomery Advertiser, in which case it talks about how the police chief was voted in. Well, the vote in was controversial, just like the vote out of the the removal of the prior police chief, which got me interested, and I started reading into this a little bit more. And one of the key parts is the city began. The city accepted applications for the police chief on October 16th, 2014, and a day after the prior, after Dixon withdrew his of her termination. During the discussion of the vote, Billingsley Gill questioned the voting process. A scoring system was used to evaluate candidates prior to Tuesday's meeting, and he said he did not receive the information he requested on who had the highest score. Now, that is quite interesting. And on top of that, I don't know who actually had the highest score, and it's still not clear, Gill said. It just seems like a game. And let's see here. Members of the audience, including Gill's mother, also questioned the voting process and the action of the council following Dixon's termination. Jones said he appreciated their work to speak. Appreciated their right to speak to the council. Now, Jones, is this possibly the same city council member Greg Jones, that talked about saying that the cops were completely within their legal grounds to do what they did with Bama Camera on June 2nd? It was for officer safety during a First Amendment test with a guy that's just standing there with a camera, and they purposely grab the camera and turn it off. Yeah. Let's see here. Both Gill and Jones agreed that the 4 candidates for the position had the ability for the position, with Jones noting that they were all impressive. And then here's another last quote from Jones. I choose Billingsley because I thought he was the man we needed to lead us into the future, said Jones. I'm wondering if there's a good old buddy system here. That's what it leads me to believe with some of these quotes and statements. And this will also be in the description, so you can look it up. So I'm wondering, what is going on? Is there more behind the scenes that we don't know about? Probably is. It's just hard. I mean, as is, I can't really say much because I'm not down there, really in the heat of things. But I'll leave this for you guys to figure out and give your opinions on that part. So you guys have a nice day, and let us see what goes on further down the line.